Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm here with Eric Windheim. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Eric is a certified electromagnetic radiation specialist, a certified building biology environmental consultant, and also a graduate of the Radio Frequency Safety Officer course accredited by the IEEE, which I'm really interested in learning about more, and the founder of Windheim Environmental Solutions, which is a California technology and environmental health and wellness company founded in 1991, located in the Sacramento area with clients worldwide. You specialize in electromagnetic radiation. You do inspections, assessment, measurement, testing, abatement, and remediation of dangerous and unhealthy magnetic fields, electric fields, microwave radiation, and dirty electricity. Today, I know we're going to be focusing on magnetic field radiation. In 2012, Eric became the director of the Sacramento Smart Meter Awareness Action Group, which he founded, and dedicated local leaders successfully in addressing the smart meters and regaining safe and reliable analog meter options for the community, for all of Sacramento County, which I'm excited that you're going to be talking about as well. So thank you so much for coming to join us today, and I look forward to your presentation on magnetic fields.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share with you what we as professional building biologists do on a daily basis. The topic is creating a safe haven in a toxic electromagnetic world. And I am an EMRS, BBEC, founder of Sacramento Smart Meter Awareness, and a graduate of the Radio Frequency Safety Officer course. And I just want to let you know, many of my clients feel better before I leave the house. I find the source of the problem, I turn it off, and they go, oh my gosh, the pressure in my head just stopped. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, that's me. So we are trained and certified to be an expert in EMF inspection, detection, measurement, and exposure reduction. We're trained and certified to advise homeowners, home buyers, architects, builders, inspectors, and engineers in the methods that create and maintain a minimized presence of man-made electromagnetic fields in homes and low-rise commercial buildings. And I am proficient in the use of scientific equipment to measure all of this in a manner that is acceptable to the scientific community. Our solutions create a healthier indoor environment, and we use nature as our model. We're based in science, and we use nature as our model. So how did I get started in this? It's the last thing I ever thought I'd be doing, but between 1992 and 2009, my parents had just a very sudden decline in their health, one problem after another. And that's the house my dad designed and built. He's an architect. That's my mom in the last couple months of her life in fall of 2009. And, you know, what we did find later when I assessed the house in 2014, after I became certified, is that we had huge magnetic fields, and there's an image on the right. Magnetic fields put eddy currents through the body. And then they had a huge number of these compact fluorescent light bulbs, which you can see in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. Well, I didn't know anything about this at the time, but once I became trained, certified, and got the proper kind of meters, I found out their dirty electricity level was 250 times above the extreme concern range. And the magnetic fields were 3 times over the extreme concern range, and the same for the electric fields, 3x extreme. So what caused this? Well, my dad did his own wiring to save some money. That created magnetic fields due to wiring code violations. My dad used electric blankets to reduce the heating bill. That created electric fields and magnetic fields together. And then I remember I told my dad about this new bulb that would use 75% less electricity, called the compact fluorescent light bulb, CFL for short. And he says, put them in everywhere. So I put in these early model CFL bulbs, and they are horrendously dirty. So he did save about $2,000 to $4,000 over 20 years. That was his goal. But let's look at the cost. The sick care cost was over $250,000. Multiple strokes, cancer, recurring stage 4 cancer, dementia, peripheral neuropathy. So was there enough money saved to pay for the health damage or reverse the health damage? No. And their EMF exposure was completely preventable. Then that's what I advise people on every day when I go to their homes. So my mom and dad made an amazing, rapid, but partial recovery once we got them out of their EMF sick house. They couldn't live there any longer, so we brought them up to Sacramento. Now get this, mom's cancer tumors shrank in size and number according to the radiologist oncologist. He said there's fewer of them, most are smaller. There's one new one larger, but overall the number and mass of cancer was definitely reducing in just 5.5 months. And all we did was get her out of the house, but she died of heart complications at age 85. So my dad's peripheral neuropathy diminished overnight, but his dementia remained. And he eventually died of neurological problems because he couldn't swallow. But he was tremendously nerve damaged by the dirty electricity. So these tragic events, they shaped my life and set me on a new path. And my next lesson about EMF was provided to me by my electric utility. And that is the smart meter battle. Now, my utility, Sacramento Smart Meter Awareness, it was saying, your meter is ready for an upgrade. They had this brochure. And they said, wow, it's going to be wonderful. I knew that they were lying about the number of transmissions because I started to pay attention to what's happening with smart meters. And this little cartoon on the right shows all the different symptoms that people get from those so-called smart meters. Well, we put up a battle, we won, and we got to keep the analog meter, and that was a nationwide first. And that was really quite an interesting thing because I ended up speaking at the SMUD board 97 times. The person over there on the right was one of the injured victims. She was training for marathon races as a retired person in her mid-60s. The smart meter was put on her house, and she became so electrically sensitive, she couldn't even hold the spoon in her hand, couldn't even hold a pen in her hand. It would fall out of her hand, and she couldn't remember what she had for breakfast. So she has to wear that radiation suit anytime she leaves the house. The SMUD board director actually said, we know you're sincere, but we don't believe you, and we would never do anything that would harm you, okay? So actually, the utility didn't care about all these dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of injured people that went up to speak on the record for 3 minutes and that ended up on public local access TV as well. So we took a look at this brochure they've had. It says, are smart meters safe? Yes. They have about the same power as a cell phone. They transmit radio signals only once every 4 hours, and it's only for 50 milliseconds. So that's definitive, and that's in print. So what we found out is the smart meter brochure versus published data. Okay, over here we have the items, transmissions per day, peak RF power of transmission, and length of transmission. Now this SMUD brochure says 6 per day. SMUD actually tested it to be 13,381. They're off by 2,230%. So would you call that incompetence? Is SMUD deceptive? Is SMUD fraudulent? Okay, now let's look at the peak power of the transmission. They say, quote, it's the same as a cell phone. Well, actually, they tested my cell phone and the smart meter within 2 minutes, and the report simply shows that this smart meter has peak power 240 times greater than the cell phone. So they're wrong about that. Once again, are they incompetent, deceptive, fraudulent? Maybe all three. Then the length of the transmission, that's something easy to measure. They say just 50 milliseconds, but their test report shows anywhere from 900 to 1,450. So they're off by 29 on that. So with that in mind, I said, okay, we got them. I did a Public Records Act request of their oath of office, and that's an oath of office on the left side for one of the board members. They have to support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign, domestic, and bear true faith and allegiance. Okay, lying to your constituents, particularly in print, is never allowed. So I served my utility with a notice of right of self-defense. And this is the actual document that I delivered by certified mail. I presented on the record at the board meeting. They were shocked. And that's them right there. That's the group of people that we saw every single time. So I stated that SMUD acted incompetently, deceptively, and actually fraudulently. And I stated that self-defense in the face of imminent bodily injury is a God-given right protected by law and the Constitution. They stopped and they allowed us to keep the analog meters. So after a little victory, I said, okay, well, I'm going to keep going around talking about smart meters. And we had all these public booths in front of the Capitol, at fairs, you know, Elk Grove Pumpkin Festival, Celebrate Sacramento, Earth Day. And the thing is, it's really sad. Only the people that were injured by the smart meters really wanted to talk. Everybody said, nah, it doesn't hurt me. I don't need to know about it. So I quickly became aware that only the injured people are really going to pay attention. Everybody else is too busy with their life. And we had more than 12 public events. We printed up tens of thousands of brochures. I met hundreds of victims, and that was really the education. Hearing all these people hear about what's happened to them from the smart meter. And what's interesting is you read this list of symptoms to people and say, do you know anybody that has any of these symptoms? And they go, oh my, what about me? Well, what have you got? And then we find out it happened immediately after the smart meter was put on the house. So this was a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money. My wife reminded me that, you know, Eric, you're living on savings. You're not making any money. I don't appreciate it. So at that point, a colleague of mine named Liz Menkes, who's a electromagnetic radiation specialist and building biology environmental consultant like I am, and she now lives in Sedona, Arizona, by the way, if you're looking for somebody good down there in that area. She said, you might want to check out building biology. And so I did. I checked it out, and they're the most comprehensive institute for training people to be building doctors. We're based in science. We use nature as our model. It came from Germany. And so I enrolled, I started studying, and I just soaked it up like a dry sponge in a bowl of water. So I got my certificates. I continue to renew them by taking the required amount of continuing education units every year. And one of those CEUs was the Certificate of Completion from IEEE. They have this, that's the International Institute, the Institute for Electrical and Electronic Engineers. They have a course called the Radio Frequency Safety Officer course. And it's where they espouse all and indoctrinate people with all the doctrine and dogma of the FCC about the only way people can be hurt from wireless radiation is by heat. And I've got news to tell you, half the class really didn't believe that, even though they were being forced to sit here, take this course, and learn all these policies, doctrine, and dogma. So here's some basic principles about building biology. Number one, you have to verify that the site itself is safe and free of both naturally occurring and man-made health hazards. Two, minimize the presence of man-made power system EMF generated within the building and from outside. Why? You can't stay well, much less get well, in an EMF sick house. So there's 4 kinds of EMF: electric fields, magnetic fields, dirty electricity, wireless radiation. And today we're going to be talking mostly about magnetic fields and a little bit about electric fields also, because they're very closely related. And they can cause discomfort, impairment, injury, sickness, and death. I've seen all of that in my clients, particularly the ones that are elderly and can't move. And I want to take a look at that woman up there who's in some sort of distress. Do you know anybody that feels better when they are away from their house and worse when they come back to it? Yes, no. You see, that's called sick building syndrome. If you don't feel good in your house, but you feel better in that house over there or this house over there, what's wrong with your house? Okay, so that's time to get a professional EMF home assessment and find out what's wrong with your house. See, we're building doctors. Now, you probably all got a doctor. He's a body doctor, and he'll do, all kinds of good things for you that way, but he'll keep sending you back to a sick house. They may know about mold, but they certainly don't know about EMF. So what is the purpose and protocol of an EMF safety assessment? Okay, we have a protocol we're trained to do, and it's detect, measure, record, focus on areas where people spend time, assign a risk level, propose and effectuate proven solutions, and then verify reduction. So we detect with precision instruments, and I get new instruments every 2 years just so I can say they are within the calibration period in case I have to write a report that ends up going to a lawyer or municipality. We measure with accepted scientific units of measurement. We use the same exact units of measurement that is common and understood in science. We record the levels on a hard copy form, and they later get a written report. We focus on areas where people spend time, where they park their bodies. And then we assign a risk level according to peer-reviewed papers and studies. So it's not my opinion, it's not the Institute opinion, it's already in print about what level of EMF causes heart attack, ADD, autism, childhood leukemia, etc. So then the most important thing is we propose and effectuate proven solutions to reduce your exposure. So before I leave, I always write out a list of next steps. It may be very simple, like get rid of those bulbs, get rid of these dimmer switches, and then you're A-okay. But it may require coming back with an electrician and fixing things. And then verification of the reduction. We have a chart that shows the before exposure and the after exposure. And that way the client says, I see what you did. So the scope is we want to identify the sources and venues of all these toxic EMFs. What's the source and how does it get into your house? So then we evaluate the risk levels according to building biology SBM 215. Well, you see, we look at all the peer-reviewed papers and we decide, is it no concern? Is it safe for everybody and therefore no correction is needed? That gets a green code. Yellow, okay, that correction is needed for the infants, elderly, sick, or sensitive people, but healthy adults can endure that, no problem. Severe, corrections needed for all people. Extreme, man, avoid the exposure now and take corrective action as soon as possible because the rate of injury exceeds the rate of repair. You can't toughen up to this. You can't take food supplements, exercise, meditation, prayer, none of that trumps the electromagnetic radiation, which is alien to our planet until Edison introduced it back in the 1880s. We have no defense against it. So with the suggested solutions, okay, now this is where the rubber really meets the road. Education, number one. We have to help the person increase their awareness of EMF sources, kind of like environmental health trust. Remove the toxic device, replace it with something that's not toxic. That's simple. There's so many non-toxic solutions so you can keep using your technology. You don't need to use a toxic device. Okay, repositioning to create distance. Like if the people really have to use Wi-Fi, we can move the Wi-Fi further away, like maybe out in a garage. So distance is your best friend. And just like with firecrackers, hand grenades, and nuclear bombs, eventually there is a safe distance. So reducing usage, that's simple. When you get home, you forward your cell phone to your landline and you turn your cell phone off. There's all kinds of way to reduce your usage. Or if you have a toxic variable speed pool pump, run it during the day when nobody's home, so that when you come home at night, it doesn't affect your nerves. Repair. Wire code violations to reduce fire, shock, and magnetic field hazards. And first and foremost, the National Electric Code says wire code violations are a fire and shock hazard. They don't care a whit about magnetic fields, but these violations do make magnetic fields. So finally, if we've done 1 through 6 well, we may not need filtering or shielding. But unfortunately, most people, that's what they gravitate to. They want a filter or a shield. I get calls all the time about what kind of pendant to wear to protect myself. And they want a pill to take that's going to make all the problems in their house go away. No. You have to detect, measure, assign a risk level, and discover the problem, replace it. They just want some sort of magic cure. And I see more people hurt themselves by doing filtering and shielding incorrectly than any other remediation out there. I also see people spend more money on that than anything else. And then they call me when they're out of money and it's not working. Okay, 8, move to a biologically safer location if step 1 through 7 are not effective. And anywhere from 2 to 5 times a year, I tell people, you got to move. Well, I won't tell you to move, but here's what the chart shows. I'll say, I wouldn't live here. You're twice the extreme concern range. You have a daughter in the childbearing age and she's living at home. And you have 7 milligauss on her bedroom. Take a look at the chart and see where she fits in. Do you want to be the babysitter for her children if they can't prosper? Okay, so it's important to remeasure and verify the EMF exposure after the solutions are put in place. And I always call people in 3 days or 4 days, or certainly within a week, to find out, how are you doing? Are you doing what I asked you to do? What progress do you have? Do you need any help or backup? Because we're here to help them succeed. So this is an actual list. This is a survey data sheet from an actual client. Here's his final statement. He had a house that was full of horrible magnetic fields. I mean, from one end to the other, it was a big mess. And he said, I don't need you to do a survey. Just show up with your electrician and start fixing it from the get-go, because I've already measured it. So he said, this is the best money we ever invested. We were going to move out. We were going to sell the place. Thankfully, you fixed the house and we can stay. So time on site, both me and my EMF electrician that I've been training and working with for 5 years, we were there for 1 day. And at the end of 1 day, I decided the electrician can take it from here, and he was there 2 more days. So that cost several $1,000s, but that's peanuts compared to moving or compared to the tragedy of staying there until you get life-threatening diseases. So this is his actual survey. So this is the location: front yard, bedroom, pillow, etc. And over here is the magnetic field strength. Okay, green is no concern, magenta is extreme concern. So as found, the front yard, 0.36, that's slight, that's okay for a normal San Jose front yard. And it was the same after the fix, because we're not fixing the front yard, we're fixing the house. So here's the bed pillow, the waist of the bed, the foot of the bed, 7 milligauss on the son's bed. After the fix, it was 0.14, 0.16. So we brought him from 50% above extreme down to below no concern. And the same on the master bed, 5.7 from head to foot. Again, we got it down to 0.17. This bed had some problems. I'm not quite sure. I think the furnace was on the other side of the wall and we couldn't get it all the way down. But it's a night and day difference. Then the electric fields, we also reduced that so people can get better sleep. All beds were either in the magenta extreme concern or the severe concern, and we reduced the electric fields down to slight concern or no concern. So he was happy as a clam at high tide. And we try to produce a document like this so everybody can see, here's what I had and here's what I got. It's measurable. So let's talk about AC magnetic and electric fields. Now, over on the left, we see a drawing of a huge steel power tower, a man in a house. Magnetic fields can go out for hundreds of feet, far beyond the ROW, or the right of way, that is required by law. So just as a general comment, I would be at least another half a block away, maybe a block away from a power line than the edge of the right of way, or ROW. That's not a guarantee of safety. That's a government standard. The magnetic fields will penetrate right through your house. Nothing really stops them except military grade steel plate. Now, an electric field on the right side, that's a little different. That comes off of the wires according to the voltage. The higher the voltage, the more powerful the electric fields. And they're looking for a pathway to lower voltage, which is the earth. And if you're standing near this, your body is more conductive than the air around it. So the electric, you see, if you notice that this man is here and there's 3 different electric field rays coming down, he's a lightning rod. He's really a live wire and he's well connected. So your body is water, salt, minerals. You're a lightning rod and much more attractive than the air around you. So we're going to talk a little bit about comparison of electric fields and magnetic fields. Let's go over some terminology first of all. Now let's just start with your kitchen sink. On the right side here, pressure. Might be a typo there. There's pressure in your pipes so that when you turn on the valve, you have flow. And then the amount of flow in a kitchen sink would be called gallons per minute. So the pressure in the pipes results in flow when you turn on the faucet, and you can measure that in gallons per minute. Okay, now with electricity, it's pretty similar. Voltage equals pressure. See, at a light switch, there's voltage there waiting for you to flip the switch so it can turn on the light. Current is the same as flow. And instead of gallons, it's amps. So on the left side, very over here, is a lamp plugged in, but it's turned off. That's like a hose with the nozzle shut. Then as soon as you switch on the lamp in the lower right and the lower left, you start to have flow. That's current. Okay, so on the left, electric fields are produced by voltage, and it radiates off of any wire that has voltage on it. And you've got a couple thousand feet of wire in your home, by the way. The right diagram shows magnetic fields as a circular loop, and it's produced by current flowing through the wire. It's measured in milligauss. Electric fields are measured in volts per meter. So AC magnetic fields are created by the flow of electric current on wires, or unfortunately pipes that may be going through your house. It's a loop current. It's a concentric field that spirals around the conductor. The conductor could be a steel beam, a steel pipe, copper wire. Now let's take a look at the 2 kinds of major sources of magnetic fields. External, like the power line on the left. You can't reduce that. You got to move. That's your only solution. Now, if you're looking at a house for sale and you look out the bedroom window and you see a power line like you see here on the left, keep moving. Don't fall in love with a sick house. There's nothing you can do about that. Over on the right, we have a diagram provided by Carl Riley, who is the head of the California EMF project. And he's showing that when you have a neutral to ground connection over there on the right side, you're putting neutral current on every metallic pathway in the house, the building steel, the water pipes, the gas lines, oh yes, and even the ground wire. All of that indicates an illegal connection, and it will create a massive magnetic field. But the good news about this is internal wire code violations can be repaired. You can't do anything about a utility power line, but you can certainly repair wiring code violations in your house. So that's not a deal breaker. Once again, you can't reduce the electric fields from overhead power lines. You got to move away.
Eric, can I just clarify something? When we talk about power lines, what kind of power lines? Because all homes, certainly in our neighborhood, have power lines, but there are ones that have more, 69 kVs and up. So can we talk about that? Because what I found is that when you have with not as much power going on than power lines, you get those highest levels where the line is coming into the house and then going down the wall of the house, and then of course to the breaker box, which is totally different than being near a high voltage power line.
Well, magnetic fields are related to current, so you could actually have more magnetic field from a 120 volt line than from a 20,000 volt line. The higher the voltage, the less current is needed to deliver it. But this picture here is a 20,000 volt circuit, and you can take a look at the cables. These type of conductors are woven. They look like a rope. They're about as big around as a broomstick. And you better believe they're carrying a lot of voltage and current. But you're right. Once it gets down to the house, the service drop, which comes from the pole down to your house, if there's an imbalance there, that can be very toxic. And it can go all the way since the service panel is bonded to your water pipe, you could have electric current on your water pipe if it's copper, and that could go all the way across the house. So not every power line in your front yard is going to be this powerful, but I've seen even ones with just the skinny little single conductor wires put off huge magnetic fields if they're not balanced.
Yes.
Did that would that help you a little bit there?
Yeah, I mean, yes, and measuring is the way to find out, right? As to what's going on.
You got to use a meter. Unless you want to wait till your body tells you something's wrong. So since it's invisible and it makes no noise, you can't smell it or hear it, you got to use a meter. Should I go on?
Yes, please.
Okay. So here's a client, an actual client of mine. I met in 2017. She's a 42-year-old female, PhD, worked at the California EPA headquarters in Sacramento. She moved into this lovely 110-year-old house, very, very near a power line, and got sick, had to retire early. She became homebound 24/7, 365. Now she's getting sick faster, and she ends up in a wheelchair all the time. And then it's going from bad to worse. Now she's bedbound, very sick, and she's actually on one of those PICC lines to administer antibiotics into her heart because her whole immune system is falling apart and she's subject to all kinds of little infections. Well, this was so depressing. She felt sick, hopeless, depressed. She, her boyfriend, and her family decided to end her life with dignity in Switzerland through assisted suicide. So she says, I want to take one last vacation to the California redwoods up on the North Coast. And she recovered. Wow, good news. So then she moves back home and gets sick again. So that's when she hired me. And by the way, the final solution after about a year of battling with the utility was to move away, and she healed. Okay, so this is a magnetic field heat map. This NFA 1000 meter, this yellow meter here, it can make a two-dimensional heat map of the magnetic field intensity on the bed, the pillow, the waist, and the foot. Now, you folks are all familiar with the heat map on the weather page of the newspaper. You know, blue is cold, green is warmer, yellow is warmer, orange, and red is hot, like Death Valley. So it's the same thing. So the power line is about 12 feet away from the pillow end of her bed, and that's where we have 7 milligauss or higher. Just moving 2 feet down to the waist would drop down to 6.8 milligauss. And moving down to the foot of the bed, about 7 feet, we got 6.5 milligauss. So you can see that distance is your friend. But in every case, she's well above the extreme concern range. Okay, and this is at 5 o'clock. It could be a lot worse at 1 or 2 in the afternoon. Okay, now here's the electric field heat map. Electric fields are also very important because they suppress the release of melatonin, which is your master antioxidant, rest and repair hormone, and the AMA actually calls it an oncostatic agent. So over on the right side, on the left side, this is an electric field heat map of the bed, pillow, waist, and foot. Now anything over 10 is extreme. So you can see the pillow end is double extreme, the waist is double extreme, and even the foot is well above extreme. So then we turned off every circuit breaker in the house. And on the right side, that horrible yellow and orange upper severe concern range, that's due to the power lines, because all the power in her house has been shut off at the main panel. So if you're still in the severe concern range with all electricity in your house shut off, you got to move. There's no two ways about it. So once again, a heat map shows intensity across distance. And look at your weather page in your newspaper if you have any question about it. We're measuring magnetic and electric fields. The weather page is measuring temperature. Okay, so what caused this? Well, over on the left, there's a map, and you can see there's an electrical substation up at the top. And then there's a street. It's called 20th Street. So I took magnetic field meters readings, walking up and down the street at every street corner. And at street level, it starts off at 10 milligauss, 6, 6, 6, 5, 4. And way down at the dead end where the line ends, kind of like the end of the garden hose, so to speak, it's only 0.9 milligauss. Now, the red dot or marker, that's the client's house. So over on the right side, it's an XY axis chart of the magnetic fields. And the second story bedroom window of the client was 7.5. Down at the sidewalk outside their house, it was 4.2. So once again, external magnetic fields can't be reduced. So another way we measure this and help people see it is we do what's called a data log. Kind of like a seismograph chart. I'm sure you've all seen a seismograph chart. Everything is going fine, and then the earthquake hits and it measures the huge intensity, and then things calm down. So that measures intensity over time. Now this sinusoidal wave up and down at the bottom of the chart, that's 5 days. The peaks are the hot parts of the day, about 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and the lows are 3 or 4 in the morning when there's the least amount of electricity being used. So we found out that the peaks from the power line outside the house range from 4 to 8 milligauss, not fixable. So what are these huge vertical spikes? Well, I told the client, if you want this to look good and just show what's happening from the power lines, you need to have everything in your house off, because you've got a lot of magnetic field caused by wiring code violations. So don't use anything in the house. But they did accidentally turn a few things on, and you can see that when they turned on their power, whatever light switch or whatever, it got up to 16 to 20 milligauss. So here's the message: even though the power line is like 15 feet outside your bedroom window, you could have wire code violations inside your house. They're going to cause problems 3 or 4 times as powerful, and people never think about that. They point to the power line, and the whole house is toxic by the way it's wired. That's why you need to have a professional EMF assessment. Okay, so what's the biological and health problem here? Okay, now this top diagram is the circadian rhythm. When you enter a dark room, in the evening, close your eyes, melatonin starts to come out of the pineal gland in the middle of your brain. And that's your rest and repair hormone. And just like me today, I woke up at 5 o'clock without an alarm because I'm done. My battery is fully charged. Now, the lower chart, if your sleep is disrupted by light, noise, temperature, or EMF, you're not going to get much, if any, melatonin release. And, there's all kinds of medical studies about how important melatonin is. It stops cancer. The AMA calls it an oncostatic agent. It's a remarkably effective antioxidant to reduce oxidative stress, which Dr. Martin Pall talks about so much. So, and it's one of the most popular drugs or hormone supplements that people take because there's a huge problem with sleep in America. So that's why we create sleep sanctuaries so people can rest and repair. And that's one reason my mother's cancer receded greatly, because we just got her out of this sick house and her body could start healing itself the way it was intended. So what causes internal magnetic fields? Well, 85% are from wiring code violations. That's not rocket science. It's more like a Rubik's Cube. It can be solved. And 15% are from appliance motors, a refrigerator, washing machine. You do not want to be within 5 feet of any motor, or with your head of your bed up against the main electric panel. That's another big no-no. So this house that, this client W, when she wasn't in her bed or in her wheelchair, she was sitting at the kitchen island working on her laptop. And I noticed that on the floor, the photo on the left, we had 20.9 milligauss on the floor. Whoa, 21 milligauss on the floor. So I said, what's going on under the floor? I went down in the basement and I took out one of my amp clamps, just like this little one here. And I started clamping wires. And I said, you know what? You've got 4.6 amps of net current. Now in a circuit, there's a hot wire that goes to the appliance using electricity, and there's a neutral wire that's supposed to take all the electricity back. But if that circuit is illegally connected or commingled with other circuits, some of the electricity will go back on other pathways, and that ends up with a net current. And that creates a huge magnetic field. Also, when I looked inside one of their junction boxes, I saw immediately, just with my own eyes, I could see numerous code violations. First of all, the junction box is, quote, overfilled. That's another way of saying you've got 10 pounds of worms in a 5-pound can. And then I see in the upper right, 6 neutral wires all joined together with one wire nut. That's a violation of National Electric Code section 300.3b. And then down in the bottom area, in the lip of the, you can see these burn marks here. That's because when they closed the lid, everything was so tightly packed together that it was sparking and arcing and blowing circuit breakers. So this thing was a fire waiting to happen. So where was the building inspector? Who was the electrician? I'll let you decide that. But it's the building inspector's job to make sure that everything meets code. And then they sign off and give you this promise that, yeah, it all meets code. Not in this case. So let's talk about Lori. In 2015, Lori calls me. She's on disability. She gets very poor sleep, insomnia, fatigue, headache, stress, agitation, anxiety, irritability, disorientation, dizziness, depression. And so I asked her, said, do you feel better when you leave the house? Oh my gosh, yeah. I just feel horrible when I come back to my house. And she'd had a lot of doctor visits, spent a lot of money. Final solution was to trace and fix the wire code violations. So what do we got here? Okay, now over here on the left side, we got another heat map. And this is a heat map of the whole kitchen. And you can see the sink at the top up here. And this whole thing here is an L-shaped counter. Then here's the island. And the client always sat here in this corner, even when I wanted her to come over here and take a look at something. I said, could you come over here? She said, no, I feel better over here. So I measured, I did a heat map in the kitchen, and I said, you know what? You're sitting in the lowest magnetic field. Your body has already told you where you feel best. And she says, absolutely. So I came back with my EMF electrician, and we found out there's an illegal connection between the neutral wires of two circuits. I mean, this was a gold mine, because I said, okay, I think the problem is right here. It's probably a connection between the 15 amp light circuit and the 20 amp kitchen counter circuit. We found this problem in the first 20 minutes. So when we fixed that, we went from this hellish multiple extreme concern range to the bottom of the no concern range. And she said, oh my gosh, what did you do? I said, why? I felt something. I haven't felt this good in my house since I bought it 14 years ago. So as soon as we unhooked those wires, she says, oh my gosh, what did you do? And, you know, so I did this before and after heat map. Fortunately, I did it before we started repairing it, and then I was happy to do it afterwards. We moved her out of a towering, you know, a very hellish situation that was very painful, to a peaceful place where her body can heal. And after 14 years of torment, she could feel the difference just like that. So we see this all the time, and it's very rewarding. It's actually the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my life. So here's Lori's statement. She's actually on my success story page of my website, Windheim EMF Solutions. She says, when it was fixed, I felt instantly better. I never felt well in this room until Eric fixed it. I've been struggling with health issues for several years, trying to get to the bottom of them. Every time I walked into my house, especially into my kitchen, I felt depressed. I couldn't figure it out. I had a terrible bout of insomnia that lasted for months. There was a wiring code violation in the kitchen wall. So this lovely person, mother, grandmother, suffered horribly for 14 years, not knowing what was going on. That's the real tragedy. You know, we're not made aware of this by our schools, by our public officials. Either they don't know about it or they don't want to talk about it. So my suggestion is get a professional assessment. And do this with real estate. Before you buy, build, or rent, hire a certified electromagnetic radiation specialist to prepare a report. External sources are a deal breaker and can't be reduced. Internal EMF sources are fixable at a cost, but it's infinitely less than moving into a sick house and finding out you've got cancer or leukemia, or your child that you conceived is now autistic. So the cost of fixing it is an infinitesimal fraction of what can happen if you end up in the hands of the medical pharmaceutical industry, or you have to move out to a safer place. And by the way, I do have videos that I can show either at this point or at the end, Theo, a few short clips. What would you like on that?
Sure, you can show the videos.
Now or wait till the end?
Whenever they fit into your talk is fine.
They fit in right here.
Yeah, put them in.
Okay, this is the woman who worked at the EPA.
And I'm one of the 30 AI voices from SpeechLab. You listen to this video.
Okay, this is Eric Windheim, building biologist and electromagnetic radiation specialist. We're investigating a high magnetic field situation here in Midtown Sacramento. The clients are very concerned, and it seems to be causing some aberrant health symptoms. The main situation we have is these overhead power lines, and the client's house is back at the other end of the block, so we're going to be walking that way. Currently, we're at 6 milligauss, just under. Anything over 5 is extreme concern. So here we're going past a large multi-family building, and you can see the top floors. They're right where the wires are. 5.6. This is on the sidewalk. Right now, we're coming up to another cute little house. And this house is number 609. We're at 5.7 milligauss. Here we're at 5.5 milligauss, and we're in front of house 615 and 613. And what's interesting is, and down on the ground, let's put the meter down under. Okay, so let's take a little example. Let's put the meter down on the ground, and down on the ground, we've got 3.13. So as we take the meter and we raise it up towards the lines, just by 4 feet, now we're at 5.13. You can imagine what it is 10 or 15 feet further up. That's right. So we're walking into the client's house is here on the corner. Can you make sure that those lights are off before we go through the door, please? Okay. We're going upstairs. Running over the master bedroom. We're getting 6, 6.5, 7.5, and here we are right on the bed. 7.5. 7.32 milligauss. Thank you for watching.
Eric, so these elevated levels are from the power line that, so as you went up high, it got higher. I mean, what's incredible is how elevated it is just outside.
Yeah, you're right. I've seen it as high as 27 milligauss at waist level on the sidewalk, because in some cases, the utility will bury the power lines under the ground, and everybody thinks, oh, that's safe. No, not if you're a pregnant mother, because miscarriage starts to be influenced at 2 milligauss, and it can increase up to 600% for a one-time exposure of 16 milligauss. So burying power lines does not stop the magnetic field.
Yeah, I mean, many countries have limits for magnetic fields. They have various policies or informal policies in place where the levels can't be 2 to 3 milligauss, depending on the country. Many countries in Europe already have that in place, whereas in the United States, we don't have any policies that are protective in any way. I mean, we have no limits, first of all, on magnetic fields by the US government, except for California, where you have that law about the right of way for certain kinds of power lines related to schools only. And that's about it.
Okay, I have 2 other little clips that are either a minute or a minute and a half long. If you'd like to see those, we can share them. Okay.
Please do.
So here is one. This is a real estate pre-purchase assessment. We're checking out a house before we buy. This is Eric Windheim, building biologist. We're in Oroville today looking at a house, and we believe that there is a wiring code violation somewhere between the lamp and the light switch. So could you turn on the fan only? Okay, the fan is on and we're not getting any problem there. So turn the fan off, please. Now we have these overhead lights. So please turn on the overhead lights. Okay, so now we're at 2 milligauss. We were at 0.02. So we have a 100-fold increase in magnetic field. 2 milligauss is the bottom of the slight severe concern range. Turn the lights off, please. Okay, so this indicates a code violation of either sharing neutrals between 2 separate circuits or attaching a neutral to a ground. And this is a documentable violation. It creates a electrical shock hazard, electrical fire hazard, and also a biological health hazard. Thank you very much.
Can I ask? Go ahead.
We do that all the time, and people are saying, oh my gosh, I love this house. Can we fix it? I said, probably. And we need to go through the rest of the house. Oh, you mean there might be more? Yeah, there could be. And we want to add it all up so that you can tell if you're an escrow, we want to report on this so you can get a reduction in cost.
So Eric, did you fix that issue, and what was the fix for that?
They didn't call me back. You know, some people just say, well, we'll live with it. You know, they have a private discussion. I provide them all the information. And maybe they had a local friend electrician do it, but I never heard back from these people in particular.
I mean, what could that be if so it's when you turned on the light that it happened? Was it, what was it? Was it where it was wired to the light?
This is an older house. And if you notice, those were track lighting, which is a
Yeah.
modern add-on. Okay, so they probably had a quote, handyman or hairy homeowner did the wiring, and he just botched it. You know, bzz, bzz, okay, it works, we're done. It's, you know, that's why they call electricians sparky. They just beep, beep, beep. Okay, this is working. I'm done, ma'am. Pay me, goodbye. And in Oroville, they don't have as good of electrical inspectors as they do in major metro areas. So it's probably just a simple wire code violation of either neutral to ground or sharing neutrals between two circuits.
Okay.
If you like those, I have a couple other ones I can share with you on that.
Good afternoon. This is Eric Windheim, building biologist and electromagnetic radiation specialist. We're in a wonderful house and a real estate pre-purchase assessment. Everything looks great. The magnetic fields, when the power is off, the magnetic fields are less than half a no concern. The backyard is nice. It's at the end of a street. The wireless radiation is low. But when the air conditioner upstairs turns on, there is a huge magnetic field, double the extreme concern. So we're now down at a sub panel in the garage, and we can see here's the ground bus grounded to the case. And here is the neutral bus. Uh-oh, look, we've got a jumper, about a number 4 copper solid jumper. You should never have neutrals and grounds on the same panel bus bar, except at the main panel, which is 100 feet away. So this is an illegal connection. And we're getting almost a full amp of current here. This is creating a huge magnetic field that's going through the whole house. And this is what we look for when we do a real estate pre-purchase assessment. We look for deal breakers, but this is probably fixable. Thank you very much, and goodbye for now.
I have a question, maybe you were about to answer, but you have an electrician that you work with. I know here I'm in the Washington, D.C. metro area. There is not an electrician that I know who is familiar with this issue. And I got Carl, Riley's book to present to them. But can you talk about what, how do people find an EMF aware electrician? And is there any training going on for them?
Okay, well, first of all, electricians don't know the term EMF. They deal in net current, neutral to ground. You have to speak their language. Since you've gone to many foreign countries, you have to speak the language properly and have the idioms correct, or they know you're an outsider. Okay, so what I normally do is I prepare, like, the background behind me is Bonners Ferry, Idaho. My assignment was to recruit a local electrician in advance and meet him there on site and fix wire code violations in the house. So I said, wow, okay, do they even have an electrician in Bonners Ferry? Because it's not the end of the earth, but you can see it from there. So I made up a simple email and say, greetings. I'm an I'm an electrical health expert. This house has wire code violations of the National Electric Code. We are looking for someone to do work during this week in May. And the right person will be very familiar with troubleshooting wiring code violations and restoring violations to National Electric Code. If you're the right person, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about, and I want to talk to you. If this sounds unfamiliar or uncomfortable, don't worry. It's just not something that you're well versed on or do on an everyday basis. So I let them step forward, and then I interview them. And most of them will say, look, I've been doing this 30 years. I never heard of anything like what you're talking about. Okay, next, forget about that guy. You're looking for somebody who says, I know what code violations are. I know how to fix them. I know how to troubleshoot. I love doing this kind of work. It's kind of like solving a puzzle. That's the kind of guy you're looking for. Now, in my case, I found one 5 years ago. I'm training and grooming him, and he actually wants to go and get trained and certified like I am because he thinks it's so much more rewarding than hooking up a garbage disposal or a TV set or a stove. Okay. And by the way, if you want to see these videos and a lot more, you simply go to my YouTube channel. You go to YouTube and you put in Windheim EMF, and you'll find a channel with 120 videos of actual stuff I see on the job. Then you can look at all of them. And you can use the contact form on my website to contact me if you have a question. But please just don't hit me with the phone call. I'd like to see what your question is in writing. Windheim EMF Solutions. Just go to Google and put in Windheim EMF, and you'll see numerous listings to my website. And then if you want to see my videos, you go to YouTube and just put in Windheim EMF, and that'll take you to the main page. There's actually 120 videos there. So here's another interesting find. Now, this client was a breast cancer survivor, okay? Once burned, twice shy. And she had taken a number of building biology courses. And she said, wow, I'm looking at a new house up in Lake Tahoe. It's probably the last house we ever want to live in. And I want to make sure it's safe because I've survived cancer. And so I'm walking through the kitchen area and I'm saying, you know, there's something funny. From one end of the house to the other, there is a huge magnetic field. It's very high and extreme at waist level, and it's much worse down on the floor. So once again, the source is probably underneath the floor. So I brought my crawling clothes and I spent about an hour under the house crawling around. And I found these electric current on the gas line. Now those meters right there, they're similar to the one I'm holding right here. That's an adjustable clamp meter. You take the hoop out and you put it around the pipe, and then you can read the current. So we've got electric current on the gas pipe. And, you know, electricity and gas are not a good combination to begin with, but it's making a huge magnetic field through the whole house. So also while I'm down there, I'm seeing 1.4 amps of net current on the feeder cable between the main service entrance where the utility power comes to the house and the sub panel all the way at the other end of the house. 100 feet of run from one end of the house. So they got a gas line with current on it. We got a major conductor with current on it, huge magnetic fields. And they go, oh my, we love this house. I said, yeah, it is nice, really nice, but this is fixable. Oh, thank you. And so we made up a little simple report, photographs with code citations. I gave it to the client. She gave it to the realtor. It was an instant decision. Okay, fine. How about $5,000 discount? Can we keep moving forward? See, they were worried about losing the sale. And they said, would you take $5,000 discount? Yeah, done deal. Okay, so that report got a $5,000 discount. It prevented these people from moving into a sick house. And it's the best of all worlds because you don't want a cancer survivor moving into a house with high magnetic fields. More bad things are going to happen. So now this is really interesting. A lot of people, you know, there's always a toilet in the master bedroom. And it's amazing the kind of magnetic fields you see on toilets, or not just the toilet, but the whole master bedroom. You know, there's a list of where ADD starts, leukemia, miscarriage, asthma, hematological cancers, that's blood cancers, all major cancers. All of this stuff is well documented. But the thing that really concerns me is a pregnant woman sitting on the toilet in the master bedroom. How many times do you think she might sit on that toilet during the term of her pregnancy? Okay. Now, at Kaiser Permanente Research Center in Oakland, California, Dr. D. Kun Lai has a field study where he had women wear a magnetic field meter on their arm. And he determined that a one-time single momentary exposure to 16 milligauss or higher is correlated to a 600% increase in miscarriage. So look at the reading we're getting here. And look at the reading we're getting on this toilet, okay? Now, if you don't have a meter or have a professional survey, how are you going to know that something's wrong? Unless your body tells you something is wrong. And that may be painful or tragic. So it really pays to have an EMF assessment to avoid expense, pain, suffering, and grief, or maybe even death. So people say, Eric, I don't believe you. I mean, you're here to say how bad it is. No, I'm here to measure it. I report, you decide. So you can see all of these different studies. By the way, here's the IEEE level. They say 9,000 milligauss is safe. And ICNIRP, they say 2,000 milligauss is safe. But then we find out there's all these other diseases that start, mostly cancers and developmental child diseases. Anything from above 1 milligauss is associated with ADD, autism, childhood leukemia, blood cancer, etc. And there's more. There's a lot more than this. But I help the client understand that this is based in and on science. I don't try to sell them on anything. I try to lead them to a point of decision where they have enough facts to decide for themselves. That's the important thing, helping them come to a place of understanding so they can see, here's the risk, here are the reports, what am I going to do? So one of the most important things we do in every house is we create a sleeping sanctuary. And that means battery clocks only, no electric clocks. We identify and turn off the circuits that affect the bedroom. We eliminate or shield from the radio frequency radiation. We use beds without metal because they can become magnetized. We make sure there's no elevated magnetic fields. And many clients sleep better the very first night. In fact, the clients rave about it. And I try to create one at every single house I visit. So here's a simplistic look at it. This poor man over here on the left, he can't sleep. He's wired, literally. There's Wi-Fi, there's cell phones. He may have the cell phone on the desk table right here. Maybe he's got the cell phone tucked under his pillow. Maybe he's got the Wi-Fi directly under his bed. I've seen that. Maybe the power panel for the whole house is right on the head, right behind the pillow end of his bed. So he's going to have super high electric fields. Maybe there's wiring code violations and he's got magnetic fields. Maybe there's a lot of dirty electricity created by energy efficient devices, not only in his house, but maybe even next door. So it's no wonder he's getting poor sleep. And that affects your melatonin level, your quality of sleep, your energy, your health, and probably your wealth too. Then if you can remove the EMF exposure, like this happy sleeping person over here, now you can sleep the way you were intended to sleep. You can rest, you can recover, you can enjoy your life. Your children will get along better. I hear it all the time. Even the dog is behaving better.
Yeah, you know, I was at an Airbnb once, and of course the first thing I do is take out my meter to find out where everything is and turn as much things as I can off. And there was a router literally right under the bed. Like, I guess that was where they thought would be a good place to place it so no one could see it, because they didn't want to mix up the ambiance of the room, but it was in fact under the metal bed.
Theodora, it's really interesting. The FCC has determined that routers are safe as long as you're 8 inches away.
Right, 27.
Nothing bad can happen as long as you're 8 inches away. Okay, so this is the last slide. The big question is, who will you trust? And what is at stake for yourself, your family, your finances, your children? The key scientific question is, the very most popular one is, Are there health effects linked to the wireless age? Well, RF radiation is on the top of the list of concerns, but the electrical age. Now, I want to point out to you that when Edison started distributing electricity, lifespan went down 8 years in all major metro areas where he just started distributing it. And that's due to epidemiological studies from Dr. and Master of Public Health, Sam Milham. Now, the people that lived on farms, their lifespan didn't go down 8 years because the farms weren't electrified until after World War II. But when they electrified the farms through the Rural Electrification Act, their lifespan went down 8 years on the average. There's one group of Americans that didn't have that problem, and that's the Amish people. And what are they famous for? No electricity. Okay, so electricity is wonderful. It empowers us. It helps us live better. It helps our economy. We couldn't live without it. But we've got to learn how to handle it properly, kind of like fire. Is it cooking your food or burning your whole county down, like we see here in California so often? So on the left side, you'll see a yellow no. Government and industry are saying there's no problem with this, just go ahead and buy the product and get on with your life. That's their general statement. They're protecting themselves, and it doesn't hold up to daylight. It's not based on truth. It's really only true according to the scientists that they hire. But on the right, you can talk to injured people. They say, look, when I go into that house, I hurt. When I leave, I feel better. And independently funded scientists show that there is harm related to electric fields, magnetic fields, wireless radiation, and dirty electricity. So the big question is, who are you going to trust? I'd suggest you look well into the matter. I suggest that you have an EMF assessment of your home by a certified and experienced building biologist, or better yet, electromagnetic radiation specialist. On my website, you can contact me through my contact form. I would love to talk to you, but only if you've already sent in a contact form so I understand what your concerns are, because I am very busy. And when I'm in the office, I'm doing paperwork from the previous client that I just saw. So people say, well, how much does this cost? Well, it's a fraction of what can happen if you do nothing. But the basic fee is a $300 minimum for a 2-hour visit. So I urge you to determine your exposure risk, get effective solutions, learn how to use technology as safely as possible. And I thank you for attending. And if you like this, please contact Theodora at the Environmental Health Trust, and we can do another segment. Remember how I said there's 4 EMFs, electric fields, magnetic fields, wireless radiation, and dirty electricity? We could talk about shielding. This is a large shielding project I did back in Arlington, Virginia, and that was very interesting. And the results were very fascinating. So there's other things we could do in the future if you let Theodora know that you'd like to see more of this. So at this point, we're open to questions. We can go back to any of the slides and review anything you want, whatever's best for you, Theodora.
Well, thank you so much, Eric, for this talk. I know that there are so many issues to address when it comes to electromagnetic radiation in homes and in businesses. And you've addressed just something that is so important, because when people do those measurements and find these high milligauss and it's not related to an exterior source, there are solutions and ways to fix it. A lot of people aren't even aware that they have these violations of codes in their house, and the electrical cords in their house. Let me just say something about what just happened. The Health Council of the Netherlands, for example, unlike the United States that has no federal agency at all ensuring safety when it comes to magnetic field, electromagnetic fields, the Health Council of the Netherlands, which by the way has scientists who are affiliated with ICNIR. However, the Netherlands has a policy ensuring that the field strength be averaged not above 4 milligauss actually for homes from our overhead power lines. In fact, they bought up homes that had levels which were higher in order to decrease the public exposure. And they just came out with 2 new reports. One was on adult cancers. They'd already had a report on childhood cancers because childhood leukemia is associated with levels above 2 and 3 and 4 milligauss, but they're finding adult cancers also linked with magnetic fields, which of course we've known for a long time. There's a lot of science on this, but to have the Health Council of the Netherlands have an official report is really huge news. And they state that just as in the case for children, leukemia was found to occur more frequently in adults who live close to overhead power lines. And they also looked at occupational exposure, something we haven't addressed here, which is really an important issue that really deserves its own talk, which is are the occupational exposures. I was on vacation last month, and as I watched through the door, I was at a restaurant and I was looking into the kitchen, and I could see the microwave oven and the man standing in front of that microwave oven, right? Which a microwave oven is going to both leak microwaves, but it also has very high magnetic fields when you're right next to it. His head was about this close. And the whole time for 2 hours, there he was with that head near the microwave oven, open, closing it, open, closing it. So this is like a whole other issue, right? But they looked into occupational exposures and found higher levels linked to not only leukemia, but male breast cancer, brain cancer, and pancreatic cancer. And they note this in their report. They also looked at neurological disease and found not links to Parkinson's, however, with regard to ALS and Alzheimer's disease, research that did show higher levels, occupational levels associated with ALS and Alzheimer's, more for ALS. And they state, we recommend reducing occupational exposure to magnetic fields as low as is reasonably possible. So we have so much work to do in the United States to have this issue become an issue that our regulatory agencies address, because it's unregulated. This is an unregulated exposure.
And by the way, Theodora, yeah, your talk about the guy in a restaurant just operating the microwave nonstop. First of all, the door on the microwave leaks like a sieve. And if your bank account leaked that badly, you'd be broke before the sun goes down. Okay, but then there's more. That's just one exposure, the wireless radiation. And it can be a couple 100,000 microwatts standing real close to it, you know that. But then you got the magnetic field. Okay, so now it becomes a perfect storm, so to speak, just like that famous fishing trip movie with George Clooney. You've got more than one toxin working on the person at the same time. And it's, you know, you have 2 ultra extreme concern toxins beating up on you on the same time. And so you can expect to not just have twice as much, but maybe 4 to 8 times more health injury when that happens.
You know, in my children's school, when they did, I wouldn't call it an assessment because it didn't rise to the technical level of assessment, but the measurements that they did, which were crude, but nonetheless, they did measurements in the school. And they found that the microwave, so that each classroom had a microwave oven, and every lunch, all the kids would line up. I mean, I'm talking about microwave kids in a line right up to that microwave, right? And they'd microwave their food. And they actually found, and this was shocking to me, because when do we ever exceed FCC limits, right? Ever, right? They found that this is not funny, but they found that one of the microwave ovens in one of the classes was leaking so bad that it exceeded levels. And they were like, don't worry, everything is safe in the school, except for one classroom where we found this microwave oven just, you know, it's like from 1984 or whatever year it was that the school, you know, donated to the school or something, and that it was leaking and it was excessive. So thank you for that. Thank you for having us fix this problem. course, there were Wi-Fi routers and all kinds of other problems that weren't addressed, but yeah, microwave ovens, and also in college dorms, right? In a college dorm, you'll have kids with that little refrigerator, and on top of it is the microwave oven, and the bed is right next to it.
Yeah, or it can be on the other side of the wall from the pillow end of
That's
your
right.
bed. So that's quite often when someone calls me and they say, I live in an apartment, I want you to come out and tell me what I need to do. So, okay, let me give you the short story. Move. Well, why? Look, I really can't help you. You've got people with Wi-Fi and microwave ovens above you, below you, and left and right, behind you. You know, you have no control over living in multi-family dwellings, unfortunately.
But, you know, many people can't move. I mean, it's really not a viable option. And most people don't even know that maybe they should move.
Well, it's
So-
always very sad though, when I go do an apartment, they say, okay, so you got this, you got this, you got this. And the client says, what should I do? I say, well, you need to get permission from your property owner, your landlord, to do these improvements. And they may not allow you. And why would you want to invest a couple $1,000 into fixing a place you're just renting in the first place?
Right. You know, just a little history for those of you who are listening. So before 1996, and the Environmental Protection Agency and other federal agencies had a rather robust research program, certainly in the late 80s and the early 90s, which was slowly defunded. But in 1996, it was fully defunded. The EPA was told it needed to stop all activities related to electromagnetic radiation. But they were studying this. There was research looking at the biological effects from non-ionizing radiation, and specifically on magnetic fields, which is kind of what started the whole, well, in the United States, there was the issue with the power lines and childhood leukemia and all, there's so much history here we can't go into in this session, but there's no limit. I mean, I find it preposterous that we have this exposure with no limit, none. There
Well,
is no federal limit.
you know, you're exactly on target. It's like the three monkeys: see no evil, hear no evil, therefore I can speak no evil. I don't want to know about this, because then it's my duty as a servant of the people to tell them about this. So the government doesn't want to know about it, because otherwise they've got culpability. So it's up to you to look out for yourself.
Well, right. But the federal health and safety agencies, or federal agencies with health and safety expertise, I should say, should be addressing this issue. And that's something that we're really working on. I know in my latest email exchange with the EPA, as they said, we have no funded mandate to look at these issues. There is no entity that has our back on this. So really get a meter, or hire an expert to do an assessment so that you know what your exposure is. And then you can remediate, if possible, what you can remediate. And if not, at least you know what you're dealing with. But right now, most people don't know.
Yeah, I think it's really great that you can do that and encourage those people on that level. That's great. You've got more patience than me. I just want to go out there and find problems and fix them. So would you like to review any particular slide or ask any question about anything we covered?
Yeah, well, so some of the questions that came in that I had preceding this from our patrons, what have you done regarding schools? Have you ever measured a school?
Oh, yes.
And what have you found, and have you been able to fix it?
Well, primarily I've been able to access a public school in Vacaville Unified School District in California. And the Wi-Fi was right on the top of the students, right in the middle of the room on the ceiling. And there was no way they were going to go back to the books. But the teacher was very allergic to dirty electricity. And we measured the dirty electricity. I said, here it is on the oscilloscope and the spectrum analyzer and the Stetzer meter. Hey, the good news is 3 of these little special filters in this case would solve the problem. And then the superintendent says, well, we can't do that. I say, well, why? But do you know how many classrooms I've got? I've got 1,100 classrooms. If those things cost $30 a piece, that's $100 a classroom. That's a lot of money. We can't afford it. That's a non-issue. If the teacher wants to buy it and bring them in, fine, but we're not going to put them in the classrooms. Okay, then there was a Waldorf school. And
wait, you're saying nothing happened, Eric? That you had this solution, $100 a classroom, which to me is, change, and they didn't do anything?
yeah, I told them, I said, what if the teacher feels better? What if the students perform better? What does that mean? Is that worth $100 one time to make this place safer? I said, it's a non-issue. Thank you for your report. Goodbye.
Wow.
So, I think he just allowed me to do the report just to say, okay, we got to let this guy come in, do his testing, blow off some steam, and then we'll just move on and forget about it. So though I went to a Waldorf school, and a doctor introduced me to the staff there, and we set up I can show you some of the pictures. We did the testing.
Yes, please do.
Okay. We set up a data logger right in the middle of the classroom, and with it to measure the output of the wireless radiation from the Wi-Fi and the laptops. Okay, so let's see here, Waldorf. Okay, so I did this one back in 2016. It's censored, so there's no private data here. Let's share that. Okay, so this is the report. It's a Waldorf school. They used to have Ethernet, but then they went to wireless. So here's the setup. Can you see the classroom with all the laptops?
Yes.
Okay. And then the data logging equipment is right here. This measures power density over time. Is that big enough, or should I find a way to increase the size?
I can see it.
Okay.
You can make it a little bit bigger if you want, but
Trying to find a way to do that here. I think that's it. Okay, so this is a child's classroom. Those are all MacBooks. So we did a data log. Keep in mind, the equipment is right in the middle of the classroom on a table where a student would be sitting. Okay, so with the Wi-Fi on, we've got like 6 microwatts per meter squared, very low, because the Wi-Fi for this classroom is 3 classrooms away. So with the Wi-Fi off, you can see it clears up, but the level really doesn't go down too much. Okay, then we turn on the laptops and we have them start all watching a YouTube video that we had queued up in advance. So here's Wi-Fi off, unplugged, Wi-Fi on, in idle mode. And then we turned on the laptops. We went around the room and turned them on, 25 of them. And the power level went up to 165,000 microwatts per meter squared, where a student would be sitting. And then as the videos ran out, it dropped back off. But to have children subjected to kind of an average of 40,000 microwatts per meter squared up to peaks of 165,000, the Japanese have this special botanical art called bonsai, where they trim little teeny plants, miniature trees. And their slogan is, as the twig is bent, so is the tree inclined. And Dr. Cindy Russell, who you know, she has a study on Wi-Fi in schools. And there are peer-reviewed studies that shows that schools with lower wireless radiation have higher scholastic scoring and better spatial reasoning. So Wi-Fi does not yield better education. It may deliver information more rapidly, but it actually prevents people from getting higher scholastic score or having higher spatial reasoning. So this school, they're all excited. The IT guy even said, I'm shielding my office from that Wi-Fi closet because it's only 5 feet away. I mean, the level on his desk was horrible. And so then it got passed from one committee to another, and they were talking about getting funding for going back to cables. And then it just fell off the end of the desk, and people said that was then, this is now, we got other things to worry about. So they just kept putting it off until it disappeared. Sadly.
Been here, done that. Yeah, that's really sad. Although, you know, these private schools, well, the public schools are a whole separate situation because they'll have like sometimes 3 routers or access points in each room. But the private schools are often their parents or, you know, people who are putting the installations in. And sometimes you'll have a router right at body level, just sitting there on the desk because someone just put it right there. And you got the kids sitting next to the router, which is, of course, even violating the FCC recommendations of 8 inches, right? Yeah.
So it's pretty well. And then I spoke to the superintendent of Elk Grove School District, along with Mark Graham, who's a effective local advocate. He arranged the whole meeting, and we got a RF engineer by the name of Hammett and Edison to measure Wi-Fi on the schools. And I must say it was an extremely glib and extremely high-priced report. They came on and they say, we observed Wi-Fi antenna on the roof, on the ceiling. Didn't verify they're on it, says we saw them there. Then they took about 5 or 6 readings for the whole school, and they did 3 schools. Well, they didn't do every classroom. They didn't do the center of the classroom, the corners of the classroom. They just walked through and took 5 or 6 readings. And of course, they measured it with the RMS measurement technology that the FCC uses. And they say, everything here is 1/10 to 1/2 of the what we're allowed to put out. So then the superintendent said, well, look, Eric, the fact of the matter is we have a 5-year lease on this Wi-Fi equipment. We can't back out of this contract. We're locked in. And these guys are going to be upgrading it for us over the next 5 years, but it's an ironclad contract. So that was their out.
Yeah. Many school districts with many stories. I'll say in Montgomery County, where I live, we addressed this issue now a decade ago and had all kinds of news stories happening, parents writing, people going to board meetings, all kinds of elevated awareness on this issue. And the school district actually hired a company to come and take measurements in several schools, actually. And then, of course, it was all within FCC limits. They had this huge report. We had experts from around the world actually write letters to the Montgomery County School Board informing them that FCC limits were not protective. And the school board still has a web page up where it has unfactual information, numerous pieces of unfactual information, all of which have been addressed. I wrote dozens of pages of a response to their web page, which says things like that the FDA and other health agencies have reviewed the science and find that there's no problem, which is not true because there hasn't been a review. And all of these issues were addressed. In fact, it was a big part of our lawsuit against the FCC. My response to the Montgomery County School Board webpage or school district webpage is actually part of the evidence. And it had some really key things. I went back and forth with the National Cancer Institute, for example, because a lot of people cite the National Cancer Institute as determining safety. when they have not made such a determination with any, it's not like they have scientists who got together, they did a report, they looked at the science, they have a report. No, that was not done. Instead, there are people who remain unnamed, we don't know, who reviewed some science under a process which we don't even know what that process is, and put some studies up. And it is selective and cherry picking. There are some studies up, but not other studies. And the National Cancer Institute actually responded to my emails to confirm that they haven't done a full systematic review to make any kind of determination. There has been no review. That web page is a page with information on it, again, by unnamed scientists.
Well, see, they have an alibi. We haven't done the study, okay? And the other people that have the cherry picked, those people are being deceptive by nature. So when you have people that have alibis like I know nothing, or they cherry pick, you can bet they really do have a motive of avoiding the truth and not letting people know. And that's sad. It's another reason why you need to have an inspection of your home, unfortunately, at your own cost, to find out, is it safe? Will my children develop properly? Will I have another miscarriage, or will I be able to give a live birth? You know, why do I have a splitting headache when I come home? Why am I angry when I get home, and I feel better when I go to my construction job? You know, of all things, and this one guy say, I feel so good on my heavy construction job. I can hardly wait to get out of bed and go there every day because I hurt so much at home.
Yeah, we don't listen to our bodies anymore. Not everyone is aware of what's going on in their environment because they're always sick.
Well, then the doctors, you know, they do everything they've been trained and allowed to do: drugs, radiation, chemo, surgery. And they, you know, they are important, but they don't come out and check out your work environment. They don't come out and check your home environment. They know very little about EMF, although I have received hundreds and hundreds of referrals from medical doctors, DOs, naturopathic, functional medicine doctors. They get it. You know, it's just like doctors are starting to say mold in your house may be making you sick, so you need to have a mold expert. Well, at least they're moving in that direction on that. They're far from that as far as EMF goes. Maybe just a very few, maybe 1% of the doctors are aware of EMF.
Right.
And by the way, I have your website listed in the resource section of my on my webpage, so that they can go and look at all the wonderful documents, all the wonderful, easy to print flyers and postcards you've got. So you're really producing an excellent resource to people there, if they can find it, if they know about it, so they can go and print up flyers that they can download and send out to all their friends. I tell people, don't try to explain it yourself. Just get permission to send a professionally prepared piece and let that do the talking for you.
Yeah, yes. We have a lot of work to do, and thank you for what you're doing on this issue. So I hope we can have you back to talk about maybe dirty electricity and radio frequency as well. And go online. I hope people will go and look at your website and get more information, because your videos are very informative as well.
Yeah, once again, my company is Windheim EMF Solutions. The website can be found by going to Google and putting in Windheim EMF. That's Windheim, WINDHEIM. And you can also find the YouTube channel by searching on YouTube for the same thing, Windheim EMF. If you want to speak with me, please fill out the contact form first. This will help you crystallize your questions, and I can look at them before you call me.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Let me know when I can be of further assistance.